What's up, Airsofters? Tom from Airsoft Headquarters here. Welcome back. Today I have the G&G G2 SR30 AEG available, and I've got a lot to cover about it, so let's get right into it. So if you guys are not familiar with the G&G G2 series, they have been out for only a couple of years now, but they are going to be the newest lineup coming from G&G. The G2 series is going to be a culmination of their most recent MOSFET internals that are going to be put into their GC16 bodies, their full metal receivers, and coming with a couple of extra accessories as well, at least for the SR30, especially from a Knights Armament license. But we're going to get to that in a minute. Just going over the entire rifle itself, starting at the orange tip, we do have the federal mandated orange tip, which is going to be just a plastic polymer flash hider that we have here. Obviously these can be removed. G&G does use a pinned flash hider type of system, so these are going to be a little bit harder for you to remove. Just a heads up, I know that is something you guys want to do almost immediately. The SR30 does feature a M-LOK rail system, and I believe this is going to be some type of nicer finish. I believe this is going to be a Cerakote. Just running my fingers over it. It is going to be all metal. What is nice is that the M-LOK does go along the 369 o'clock, but as well as all the 45s, as far as the upper 45 and lower 45. So you do have a lot more customization as far as where to put all of your airsoft accessories, whether that be flashlight, vertical foregrip, or angled foregrip, or even a grenade launcher attachment. On the very back of the M-LOK rail system, you do have a quick detach sling mount that you can put your forward mounting 2-point sling system, or maybe a unique charm if that is something that you are into, but cool that they include those. On the very top of the rail system, you are going to have straight Picatinny that is going to hold the included flip up iron sight. Now these are going to have a Knights Armament license on them, directly on the front post, not on the rear. But the front post is going to be a straight flip up, not a button flip up or anything like that. You do rotate for your elevation for the front post. And the rear, which also is going to be a straight flip up, not a button release or anything like that, is going to be in control of windage or elevation with left-right adjustments. The upper receiver and lower receiver are that of a metal construction. Now, I say metal because I'm assuming this is going to be a aluminum construction. It is fairly lightweight, and it does have that same nice finish as from the M-LOK rail system. And then they do have very large and very detailed Stoner rifle or Knights license, Knights Armament licensing. On the left hand of the rifle, you do have Stoner rifle with a individual serial number with 300 CQB Mod 2. Now this is replicating a 300 Blackout, which is going to be a different type of caliber from your standard 5.56 or 2.23. So very cool that they went with a different style of caliber. Regardless of airsoft, it's still firing a 6mm projectile. On the right hand of the receiver is going to be SR30, the type of rifle that is made up with this barrel length and caliber. Caliber 300 Blackout, Knights Manufacturing Company, Titusville, Florida, USA. And then with that receiver, obviously you are going to get some ambidextrous controls as far as imitation bolt release and magazine release, and your selector that is going to be safe, semi, and full auto. Take your charging handle back, which is going to be just a right hand operation. Nothing as far as lefty on this guy. Pull back. That bolt or imitation bolt does retain backwards, which is a nice feature. I find that feature being on more and more airsoft replicas, which is nice to have, especially with this guy, which has a rotary style of hop-up unit, which is the nicer style of hop-up unit. So when you are on the field and you are getting those 2.5s or those 2.8s adjusted, you can take a couple of shots with that window open. You can make some adjustments, shoot again, and then you can either make more adjustments, or if that's right on the money, hitting that imitation bolt release is going to slide that imitation bolt back forward and closing your bolt, and you can shut your dust cover like so. With the right hand selector switch, or at least the selector switch on the right hand side of the rifle, there is a fairly large cutout of that selector switch. So if you are right hand based and you are rotating that selector, it runs underneath the figure and doesn't get caught up, unlike some other types of ambidextrous selector switches, which are just going to force your finger out of the way. Very unique that they put the cutout. Unfortunately, with those people that are left-handed, you don't get nearly as much control with changing that selector. However, I would have to assume that you can change the left hand and right hand selector switches themselves, so you can put the larger switch on the right hand side and the smaller switch on the left hand side, so that people that are left-handed can get more surface area to rotate that back and forth. That's what I'm assuming anyway. Just be careful of the internal springs and the ball bearings. That is something that you should be careful of before you go and make those switches. Down on the bottom of the grip here is going to be a standard A2 style of grip. Nothing really special about it. It has the diamond checkering on the left and right hand side, and does have that finger groove between the middle finger and the ring finger there, since your trigger finger is going to be up on the trigger. For me, I don't find the A2 style of grip all that comfortable, so I'd like to change these out. However, this one is not unbearable as far as an A2 style of grip. So that's actually nice texturing, and I don't think that finger groove is nearly as much exaggerated as the standard A2 grips. So nice job on the A2 grip. I like that. Going back to the rear of the receiver, we do have a very new style of sling plate back here. And this is going to be a quick detach, or quick detach type of sling plate that is available on the left-hand side as well as on the right-hand side of that sling plate. It's just very weird seeing a large block that has been cut out to allow for quick detach. Normally they're just individual loops that you attach your sling onto. So very unique, not really expecting that. It was kind of a new system that I saw. Obviously with the G&G rifles, you do have a 6-position stock. So you have between number 1 and number 6 here to adjust where that stock is, if you like it much further out, or if you prefer to go all the way in, or maybe somewhere in the middle. I'm more of a number 3 guy myself. And that's kind of it as far as externals. Now we're going to get into the more notable features of the G2 base of rifles. Now with the G2 base of system, they're more well known for having the SR25 series, which is the 308 style of magazine. This is the one and only true DMR rifle that we can consistently bring in here to the store, because it has safe and semi only. No option to do full auto. So you can crank this up to 450 FPS for all of the local outdoor fields or local outdoor events. And then we have the G&G G2H Advanced, the shorty little 308 that is, you know, short and compact, just like the SR30 here, but this one here in my left hand can take 308 style magazine. So very unique. All of these feature the G2 internal system, which we're going to go over, since that is a lot of times the selling point of these rifles, well, other than the 2 unique features that I just pointed out. So with that G2 gearbox, it has more material built up. It has 70% more height and 74% more material inside of that construction, which is going to result in a more reinforced gearbox to allow, I guess, a little bit more stress internally, so it can handle that higher pressure, that higher velocity. It has a double O-ring air nozzle. It has a redesigned bevel gear for lower resistance, so you don't get nearly as much torque from that motor going into the gearbox, So that's not going to create too much issue as far as too much pressure between the gears themselves, make everything smooth and fast for faster trigger response and faster rate of fire. The G2 has a unique style of MOSFET that is different from their original ETU, but it has an ETU MOSFET and a electronic based trigger. And with that ETU MOSFET, it does have a audible setting to where if it has a low battery, it's going to emit a very low beep loudly for you to hear. And if there is any sort of troubleshooting or anything broken internally, it's going to result in a very fast beep, letting you know, hey, something's messed up, you better stop using me, anything like that. It is supposed to have a quick change spring system. We're going to see exactly just how quick that quick change spring is, and that light just died on me. That sucks. With the G2 system, there is going to be a no dry fire system, which means inside of the magazine well, there's a little switch that is connected to the magazine itself. So when the magazine is inserted, you can fire it. You can also, you cannot dry fire it though. So when the magazine is inserted with BBs, you will be able to fire it. Once that magazine is empty, it does a imitation bolt hold open feature, which means it's not going to dry fire on you. So that is going to work very similarly to a gas blowback. So you fire out, you're gonna click the trigger, but nothing is going to actually shoot until you release that magazine, put a new magazine in, hit that imitation bolt release, and then you can fire again, which is a pretty cool feature that we tend to see more and more with more airsoft rifles, especially with the KWA like we were talking about a couple of videos ago. And because of that empty magazine detection system, the G2 series can only work with the G&G G2 mid caps specifically. So you can't use a high cap and you can't use any other brand of mid cap and still have that functioning imitation bolt hold open feature. But you are still able to run and operate your standard high caps or other brand of mid caps inside of the G2 system. The G&G G2 SR30 is supposed to have a quick change spring system. Now I looked through the manual, you know, all 6 pages, you know, this is a pretty thick pamphlet. But the first 6 pages, being just in English, say nothing about having a quick change spring system. And then you got one more page about basic airsoft carry and know-how and safety. There's another 2 pages that just have the parts listing. And that's it. So a total of what, 6, 8, 9 pages out of that whole pamphlet. I wish they had gone a little bit more in depth, especially with the G2s always boasting and always being advertised as having a quick change spring system. So we're gonna try it out ourselves. So we take the end caps off of the stock, pull our wiring out just a little bit just to make sure we're not messing it up at all. Ooh, quick note, the wiring system comes stock with Dean's as the primary connector, but it comes with a adapter for Dean's to Tamiya. So no matter what style of lipos you use, you always have a connector available. I should be pulling out like that, right? Yeah. Right there, there is our MOSFET system. There's a fuse, but if we look inside the tube, yeah, you got to get a long screwdriver. It's got to go inside of the back here. Got to undo the screw that goes into the AEG recoil spring. No, not the recoil spring. The spring guide. Into the AEG spring guide. So shake that bolt out, and then this moves out of place. And oh no, it's a standard Tokumurui rear receiver, which means from immediately there is no access to the spring system, which means you have to completely disassemble the gearbox away from the receiver in order to get access to your spring, which is kind of shitty. I mean, it's still technically a quick change spring system by having that spring able to come out, but the fact that you don't have immediate access to it from the back here to change your springs in a couple of minutes or seconds. That's false advertising, G&G. But G&G is not the only one to do that. Some of a lot of brands actually will say that they're a quick change spring system, but they're not actually a quick change spring. You still need to disassemble the gearbox away from the lower receiver before you get access to the spring. And you got to remove a lot of parts, especially on the SR30 here, which is completely ambidextrous. That is a really difficult task. So unless you are mechanically inclined and you are comfortable with disassembling airsoft rifles, it's not something that I would suggest you trying. You know, our general rule of thumb is if it's the first time you're taking a AEG rifle apart, it's probably never going to go back together the exact same way. So take it to a trained technician, someone who you trust to work on your airsoft rifle if you absolutely need to get the G&G G2 rifles spring swapped for a lower tension or higher tension, which these are supposed to be shooting 400 feet per second out of the box. But what we'll do is we'll take it to the chrono station and we will try it out ourselves. But I'm just going to reinstall that stock. So we have everything working there. That's a pull up, and then everything's back together again. So unfortunately, quick change spring system really is not that readily available. You do have to tear the rifle apart a little bit to get access, which is disappointing, like I said before. But now we all know that's what you got to do. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're going to take this to the chrono station. We're gonna measure it with 0.2 gram BBs, and we'll tell you what the velocity is out of the box. Let's do it. All right, so this one is shooting at a max of 344 feet per second, minimum of 336 with an average of 340 feet per second. We'll do a couple more shots. Pretty fast trigger response. And I'm out. Then obviously with the stock magazine, that would be an automatic bolt stop. So you would have to take the magazine out, hit the bolt release on the other side when you reinsert a new magazine if you did want to continue to fire. Obviously with the battery still installed, cannot fire unless I have my finger in there, putting pressure where the magazine would sit. Then I can dry fire. And with the magazine in, that is not the G&G magazine, I can continue to dry fire. So yeah, that's what we got. All right, here at 25 feet, aiming for the head. I'm gonna have to pull this back a little bit. Ten shots to the head. Now we're gonna kick that out to 50. All right, then we're gonna kick it out to 100 feet. So one quick note is that with the rear iron sight here, it is a very, very large aperture. So I personally have a really hard time with the large aperture trying to line up consistent shots on the body with that single post front sight. So we're gonna try it at 100 feet. I know that the BBs are lifting up a little bit with the hop up, but we're just gonna run it as is. We're gonna make it roll. All right, 100 feet. All right, that was 10 total shots. Now we're gonna look at the results. All right, we're back in the studio and we have the G&G G2 shooting results. So let's go over that real quick together. At 25 feet, we had a 2 3/4 inch spread. Of course, hitting 10 out of 10, getting 10 out of 10 hits on the forehead there. Then at 50 feet, aiming for center mass, we had a 6.5 inch spread. So little over double of the, from 25 feet to 50 feet. Not really something you want to look for, but we still did get 10 out of 10 impacts on the body. And it looks like all of the movement, or all of the BB strikes were more vertical. We did have one outlier way up here. All the rest of the impacts were more center mass, with one outlier to get that 6.5. I think if I had not had that outlier, we would have had a a much tighter grouping here in the center. And then ranging out to 100 feet, unfortunately, we did have 5 out of 10 impacts. So we missed half the total shots. Not exactly sure how that happened. I think it is a result of the aperture. Like I was saying before, on the rear iron sight, there's no aperture adjustment like I mentioned with a lot of the other review videos. So this one is just a set circle. You can't adjust it to be any tighter or any looser, or any larger, excuse me. And then the front post is just that, it's just a front post. So for me personally, wasn't really accurate, or I wasn't feeling confident in being accurate. So unfortunately, the results are the results. 5 out of 10 impacts at 100 feet. But of the impacts, the spread was 8.5 inches. So only a little bit bigger than the 50 foot. I feel if there was a red dot system that was on here, that would allow me to be a little bit more consistent, other than the large ass aperture for the rear iron sight. We'd be a lot more consistent at 100 feet at least. Another thing to note was that dry fire feature. That did throw me off a little bit, despite just going over it with you guys. With the other G2 rifles that I have used, at least one previously, there was a audible beep as I plugged in the battery. So when I would plug different batteries into this one, it wouldn't beep like it did with a previous one that I had. So that threw me off. Didn't think that the rifle itself was working. So since it didn't beep, I didn't throw any sort of magazines in to test if it was actually working. So that took a minute to try to figure out, but I did eventually figure it out, that it doesn't beep when you plug the battery in, and you gotta have the magazine in if you're going to test or dry fire it, which is the only downside. Or at least stick your finger inside of there so you can hold that lever down so you actually can dry fire. So that's one of the weird things. One of the weird things, like I said. So overall, with the shooting results, could be better. Honestly, could be better. But at the 100 foot distance, we're gonna say that was all a result of the shooter not having the proper equipment, such as a red dot sight. So just to give the rifle a fair advantage, I was using the Elite Force .25s. It was shooting 340 feet per second, the rifle was, but just to make sure that it was remaining consistent and not intentionally trying to throw results off with a .20, I went heavier up in weight so that, you know, we get better impacts at greater distances, which unfortunately at 100 feet, that was not the case that we saw. But moving on. Overall, the only negative thing that I have to say about that of the rifle is that dry fire feature, like I was saying. With the electronic trigger system, for me personally, I don't feel all that confident in, if anything does happen, that I would be able to do anything about it. So for me, I would leave the orange tip on there and just play with it for the warranty period, which is 1 year. If I remember correctly, it's a 1 year warranty. A 13-month. It is a 13-month warranty, so just over 1 year. So during that time frame, keeping the orange tip on there, making sure I am not doing anything crazy internally. I'm using the stock velocity, using the stock spring, not painting it, not doing anything crazy, which seems like a impossible task for a lot of players, not modifying their product right away. But this is one that I probably would leave as is for that 13-month warranty period, just in case if something does go wrong with that electronic trigger system. I would be able to send it in to G&G and they would be able to fix it up for me, hopefully without any sort of issue. Other than that, a lot of features I like, such as despite it being all metal, it is extremely lightweight. Having the M-LOK system on here results in a very good grip for me. Being all circular and tubular allows for a good grip here. The MOSFET system that is installed on here is going to be a better option. So I could safely run LiPo batteries or lithium ions up to a 11.1, which I like. For a little bit slower of a velocity, getting a 11.1 faster trigger response on here or faster rate of fire is a really, really good thing. I really like the Stoner licensing that is on the side here, and overall just a very, very solid external build of rifle. Internally, like I said, with that electronic trigger, I'm not too comfortable with it, but that is just me personally. You guys can make whatever decisions you want. If you are comfortable with the G&G G2 system, that is all up to you guys. Overall, I think this is a very good rifle. If you guys do want to pick it up, the Stoner SR30 for 300 blackout, especially that's what the receiver says, 300 blackout. So if you want something a little bit more modern, a little bit more tactical, this is probably one I would suggest picking up, especially since it has that cool bolt hold open to those hop-up adjustments. So if you guys are interested in this rifle or any of the other G2 rifles that we have available, such as the SR25 or the 308 SBR, or even the full-size SBR and the 556 MBRs, we do have them available here at the Airsoft Headquarters, or you can pick them up on our website, www.theairsoftheadquarters.com. As always, if you do have any further questions, put them down in the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer any and all of them. And then, of course, like and subscribe if you like the video. Of course, you can dislike the video if you didn't find any enjoyment of this in-depth review. But if you do dislike, leave a comment. Tell me why you didn't like it. I'd like to make myself at least a little... And if by chance you do dislike the video, leave a comment telling me why. I'd like to hear some feedback. Anyway, you guys take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.